we just talked about sort of the manually copying footage from memory cards to hard drives, talked a little bit about redundancy, but I'm a real big fan of making my life easier.
Yeah.
And I find every once in a while, I feel like there's an app for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is like, sure, you know, I could drive an automatic car because it makes my life easier. I could drive manual if I needed to. I know how.
You're just steering if you're not driving manual, by the way, but whatever.
Yeah. But I just like things to be simpler. And I also like some redundancy. So we've got two apps that automate this process. One is from a dedicated company. It's called ShotPut Pro. The other is Adobe Prelude, which is part of Adobe Creative Cloud. And we'll just take a look at this. So let's start here with ShotPut Pro. You're a fan of this.
You're right, Rich. I've really become a fan of ShotPut Pro, and it's by a company called Imagine Products. And ShotPut Pro has been around for a while, and it's become very popular with on-set DITs and other people on set that are responsible for data backup and data integrity. And in this new version, we have a little bit of a redesigned interface, but it works pretty simple. And the real thing I like about ShotPut Pro is that it does two real things, or it has two distinguishing features in my mind. One, it allows us to copy to multiple destinations simultaneously. The second thing that it allows me to do quite easily is set up custom naming conventions if I want to name things with the date or any of that kind of stuff. Just like how you were created manually created folders in the previous episode, we can sort of automate that process as well as copy to multiple places at the same time, making our workflow much simpler.
And you bring up a good point, right? Like, renaming clips. This is one of my big pet peeves. I often use Adobe Bridge for this or Prelude to rename the clips on import because, let's face it, if I'm using a Nikon camera and I got 3 of them on set, there's a really good chance that's going to be called DSC_0001 for the first clip.
And you'll probably never have another clip called 001 for the rest of your life.
I just did a test the other day because I was backing up my photo library from the last 12 years of digital photography that I've been doing. And I just did a search for that very same file name. 37 copies on my system of that exact same file.
I'm surprised it's not more, to be honest.
That's because I actually renamed so many of my files.
Good.
But I was just like, it's still here. It's the file name that won't go away. So we've got this here pretty easy, right?
Yep. You can see there on the attached media list, we have all of our drives and cards we have attached, and we have a Nikon card attached there. But the first thing that we need to do is go down to the bottom section right here, and this is where we can sort of define where we want to copy things to. So just choose your Drobo Mini there. That's a perfect destination.
Should I make a new folder to target?
You can if you want.
All right, so we'll just have a specific one here for the shoot.
There you go. Okay, so the next thing to do is just take the attached media card there and drag it over into the center of the window, and you can see it's ready there to go. Now, all you'd have to do from this point, if you don't want to do any custom naming or anything like that, is simply click that big, bright red button in the lower right-hand corner. But
I click the red button to make it go.
Yeah, I know, it's a little counterintuitive, but big, shiny, red, you get the idea. But if you go into the file naming convention section here.
Let me just twirl that up and make a little more room. Okay.
So here, if you click into the first menu, you can see that we can have a custom volume name, so we can name it whatever we want. We can do things like have consecutive numbering, use today's date, the card name, the volume created date, and so on and so forth. You could also add prefixes and suffixes. So for example, if your project had, LDC for lynda.com, we could add a prefix to all that stuff, so it's LDC. And when we transfer things, we're going to have that prefix attached. One of the things I'm a big fan of doing is using the date, because that lets you know exactly when that was transferred. So if you ever need to go back and say, hey, did we get everything from that shoot? You can go and look at date, which is pretty easy.
That looks pretty good.
Yep.
And I can go ahead and have it start.
Yep.
And it says it's running, and it's going to do that transfer. And it's telling me about the speed here, so pretty easy. It says it's copying, but I'm a bit of a paranoid person when it comes to my data. How do I know it's really copying?
Well, first of all, go up to the ShotPut Pro menu there, and then down to Preferences. And in Preferences is right here in the middle, you can see File Verification Preferences. And if you click there, we have a bunch of different ways of making sure that we have a verified copy.
And it's telling me, don't do the no verification. Bad idea.
Bad idea. And you'll see there that the default file size comparison is the fastest, right? That's simply saying, oh, I have 3 gigabytes on the card, I have 3 gigabytes in the location that I chose. But you can do various forms of verification and checksumming to make sure that bit by bit that copy is a verified copy. Now, if you close out of that for 1 second, you can also go back up to the ShotPut Pro menu and down to Verification Utilities. And this will be able to let you do checksums on different paths that you've created that you've already transferred and things of that nature.
Looks like a pretty straightforward utility, reasonably priced. You can download a demo that's going to run 10 times so you can try it out on a shoot. I think that's a good idea. definitely a solution. Now, another one that a lot of people may already have access to and not know about is Adobe Prelude. So if they're a Creative Cloud customer or Production Premium, they've got this sort of dedicated utility that does some of the same things, right?
Yeah, and in the last version of Creative Suite, Prelude was added to the box, if you will, and it's now, of course, available in Creative Cloud. And Prelude was one of those tools that at first people were going, well, what does this really do? Think about Prelude as sort of the front end to the editorial and post process, right? With Prelude, what you can do is do a very similar process that we did with ShotPut Pro, in the sense that we can transfer media to different locations, we can verify it, we can even do things like transcode that data to other codecs on input and on transfer. It also does some other things that we won't touch in this episode, like being able to do markers and add various forms of metadata and stuff.
And actually, if you do want to explore that, I did cover a whole section on Prelude in the Premiere Pro's new features title, available here on lynda.com, so you can check that out. But it's a nice tool for people who don't know how to edit to go through and do some basic string outs or add metadata. But I've launched the app. It's pretty straightforward.
Yep, so you notice at the top of the interface there's a number of buttons. Guess what? There's one called Ingest. So let's go there, and a new window opens up, and on your left-hand side of the window you have a file tree, and what you can do is navigate to your attached media card and simply select the entire media card or a particular folder if you needed to. But over on the right-hand side you have transfer options.
And I'm seeing here that I could choose to selectively transfer individual files if I want. I've got a mixture of stills here and video clips on the same card, and that's very practical on a DSLR shoot, right?
Absolutely.
Got some time lapse, got some HDR that I'm gonna use for plates, I've got some video footage, and I want to get this onto my drives.
So you can simply select individual shots or individual clips. You could check all, so you're going to transfer everything. And once you've done that, over on the right-hand side of the window, you have some transfer options. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you're actually transferring to a destination. So you can choose a location that you want to save to, maybe one of your external drives, like your Drobo here, or your Western Digital drive. Create a new folder that you want to transfer into. Sure, that one works. And then once you've done that, on the right-hand side there, under the location, you can choose to add a subfolder. For example, you could use today's date. You could add in...
And it already tagged it with all the information.
Absolutely. Now, for video files, you could also choose to transcode that footage. Now, we won't talk about that necessarily in this episode, but this is a nice feature to have if you wanted to transfer, say, your H.264 files over to maybe a ProRes, QuickTime, or something of that nature as well.
Yeah, and I can go to things like professional formats, Sony XD-Cam, Panasonic P2, so that does give me the flexibility. If my client has other requirements for the footage, I could transcode right here, and that's one destination, and that's fine. I'm not going to do the transcode, so I will tell it to verify. And same thing, right? File size or bit by bit. And then I could choose a second destination so that I've got another location here, and I'm just going to choose that cheaper drive that I could use as my backup of my backup.
Totally.
Okay, so I've got a folder, gave it another name since it's my second transfer. And I got that and I choose it. So now we're going to two places. I could transcode that, that's fine. I've got it all chosen. And I could click Ingest, and it's going to make that copy to both places, right?
Yep, it sure is. Now, depending on, again, the speed of the different devices, the speed of your memory card reader, that kind of stuff, it can take a few minutes, so just be patient.
And I was like, wait, what's happening? How do I know? Well, I could actually see it down there, right?
Absolutely.
It's processing. So I've got that, and I said, okay, well, I want to start working with the footage. The clips will start to appear in the project as it comes across the movies. So you see that some of the clips have actually come in. I could double click to load the clip and actually see it, start to add extra information to this clip, see the audio waveforms, add comments and markers. So really easy stuff for me to put in metadata that's going to transfer to the project that the client can then actually see. So it makes a lot of sense here as you get organized. So pretty straightforward stuff. You ingest the media, it comes into your project. You could do stills, you could do video. Prelude itself will back up both, but it's really only designed to process the video files.
That's right.
So I think we got pretty valid solutions here. You can go with ShotPut Pro, and that's a standalone utility, reasonably priced, or if you're an Adobe Creative Cloud customer or Production Premium, you can go ahead and use Prelude as that organizational tool. Now, we've covered a lot of stuff here, Rob. In fact, it's taken us 2 weeks to go through all this info, but it is your data, right?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, there's nothing more important on set than that data. Sure, you could argue, well, the lighting or the lens that I'm using or so, and, so on and
That's
so
the
forth.
evidence of your hard work.
It is, but it doesn't do anything for you if that data is not protected and backed up. And over the past couple of weeks, Rich, we've talked about everything from card wallets to in the field transfer devices like this Nexto unit using portable hard drives, memory card readers, and we've gone on about it simply because it is such an important thing. And I'll leave you with one last thought that I think is really important. Whatever you ultimately decide your setup is going to be, make sure it works before you get out in the field. I'm a big fan of testing, and testing. So make sure that the drives that you've purchased for portable drives, for example, have the throughput that you need. They have the capacity that you need. Obviously, make sure that your laptop has the ports and connections that you need. And do a couple test shoots and transfer that stuff and get into the habit of what your naming conventions are going to be, which applications you're going to use for transfer, and so on. Because the last thing you want to have happen is to make decisions in the field that you're not necessarily comfortable with and that they're new decisions for you. You want all those decisions to be made before you get out in the field.
Okay, Rob, so, you say all those things, doing those things versus saying those things is hard.
Do as I say, not as I do.
There are times that I break my own rules,
Of course.
and those are usually the times that I end up regretting it when something goes wrong.
Yep.
So take the time, invest in some extra equipment, nothing crazy, but a couple of drives, fast connections, good cases for your cards. If you lose your data, you might not just lose the shot, you could actually end up losing that client or blowing up your project. So remember, nothing is more important than the data itself. For lynda.com, my name's Rich Harrington.
And I'm Robbie Carmen.
Thanks for joining us.